This is Robert Clotworthy, and you are listening to Oak Island Plus, a discussion of Oak Island and other mysteries from around the world. Here are your hosts, James McQuiston, Oak Island theorist and author, along with John Hamels, PhD and historical researcher. Get the whole story right here, brought to you by Rabbit Hole Investigations.
Direct from Innovation Studios in downtown Westfield, New York, welcome to Oak Island Plus Jackpot. And here's the star of the show, Dr. John Hamels. Here's Johnny.
Hey, thanks everybody. Well, we got a great audience here today, Jim. Well, welcome to Oak Island Plus. This is a very special edition of Oak Island Plus called Jackpot. You know, Jim, history can be really a lot of fun and interesting, and today we are going to do just that. We're going to have some fun. So everybody that's watching, please grab a piece of paper and a pencil and number 1 through 11. While you're doing that, we're going to do a little bit of information and some things. I want to do a special shout out to our friend Art and Liam over in Nova Scotia. They've been supplying us information about the terrain and some LiDAR maps, and that's been very helpful in our research. So please, and anyone else that's been leaving messages for us on our YouTube channel, it is important because each one of those pieces of information is another rabbit hole for us to go through. I know, Jim, this is going to seem hard to believe, but since the last time we got together, we now have over 2,000 subscribers. And please, if this is your first time watching or you haven't pushed that button, please subscribe. We'd love to have you as one of our subscribers. And who would have thought two guys sitting in Westfield, New York at Innovation Studios would have 74,000 views? Unbelievable. So thank you to all that have been watching us from the get-go. Okay, so Jim, we have some guest panelists today. Would you like to tell us who they are?
Yes, if you look at the screen right there, at the top left, you'll see Mary, Queen of Scots. Kind of plays a central role in our theory. And next to her is her son, King James I of Great Britain.
Handsome devil, I might add.
Good name, too.
Oh, gee.
And next to him is his son, Charles I of Great Britain. Welcome, Charles. Our next row down, we have a man by the name of Thomas Howard, who fits into our theory quite a bit. It's a little too difficult to get into today, but welcome, Mr. Howard. In the center we have a mystery guest.
Ooh, who could it be?
We'll have to find out. And on the right in the center row is Sir Francis Bacon, someone everybody knows.
Right.
And then our rabbit hole buddies, who get us in so much trouble. Bottom left, we have the White Rabbit, who's always behind.
Oh, yeah.
Got to get ready for the show. Bugs Bunny.
My friend. What's up, Doc?
Who's causing so much trouble, along with his cousin, Brer Rabbit. So that's our panel for today.
All right.
Let's get started with the first question.
Okay, well, we're going to explain how we're going to do this, Jim. I'm going to read the question and the answers, and then all of you can mark your papers with what you think is the answer. Now, we're not checking out who's right or wrong, but we are trying to make this a lot of fun. Then, once you had an opportunity to write down your answer, Jim's going to give you a little bit of time here. Then Jim is going to give you the answer and the background to that particular question. The thing I want to remind you all is that next to the screen, we have put the episode that particular question refers to in our channel. So for instance, episode 4 might be one of the answers, and if you don't know the answer, you can go back and watch the episode to get the answer, okay? So, Jim, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Audience, are you ready? Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to read the question and the answers, and then we'll give you a moment to answer. All right, number 1. Who is credited as the founder of Nova Scotia, also known as New Scotland? Was it Leif Erikson, Bova Mimosa, William Alexander, or Pepe Le Pew?
Write down your answer.
Okay, Jim, so the answer is...
Well, the answer is William Alexander. In 1621, he was given a charter to create a province or a colony which encompassed Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, all the way up to Anticosti Island. And that whole group of what our province is now was called Nova Scotia or New Scotland.
Okay, and so for more information, you can go back to episode number 3. All right, are you ready for the next question? I hope everybody got that one right. That was pretty easy. All right, number 2. What do the Oak Island Plus guys, that's us, propose might possibly be buried in the money pit? A, Jimmy Hoffa, possible choice. B, a stolen treasure from Scotland. C, a Willy Wonka golden ticket. Or D, leftover pizza. Starting now. Oh, okay, so before we answer that question, Jim, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Well, I just want to let everybody know who the mystery guest was.
Oh.
As you can see on this slide, it's none other than Sir William Alexander himself, sitting there right there with his 2 best friends, Thomas Howard and Sir Francis Bacon.
All right.
So, to take a look at this question,
Question 2, the answer will be...
it's not Jimmy Hoffa.
I wouldn't think so.
No. And it's not leftover pizza, but it is stolen treasure from Scotland.
All right.
Treasure that was stolen by a friend of William Alexander, and we think was taken to Nova Scotia to help finance that big area that he was given. And when they got booted out, they buried it, or at least part of it, on Oak Island.
So who stole it?
A man named Alexander Strachan. I call him L. He actually signed his name L sometimes. But if you keep saying Alexander Strachan, then William Alexander, you got even me confused. So let's stick with Al Strachan.
Okay, so the answer was B. All right, let's keep moving along. We hope you got that one right. Okay. What 2 major orders of knights were involved with the colonization of Nova Scotia and Oak Island? Now, this is something that we've been learning more and more about. So, A, Knights in White Satin. B, Knight Beaver. C, Knights of Malta and Knights Baronet, and D, Knights on Broadway. Okay, mark your papers. The answer is
C, the Knights of Malta and the Knights Baronet of Nova Scotia. The Knights of Nova Scotia were created by William Alexander. The Knights of Malta worked for France, and they were the leaders of the French troops trying to chase out the Scots. And in fact, they did.
okay. And Jim, I think if folks wanted to go back to episodes 3, 12, and 12.2, you're going to learn a whole lot more about these 2 particular order of knights because it's very interesting and complicated. Would you agree?
Yes. And especially 12 and 12.2, you want to watch them both because we're building up through the initial one, and kind of the punchline is in the second one. So you kind of want to watch the 2 of them together someday, binge watch them.
All right. Now, this next question is a bit tricky, so you got to listen carefully and think about this. Number 4, is it true that Freemasons, otherwise known as non-operative Masons, were first recorded in England? So, A, maybe so, maybe not. B, Scotland, 1634. C, Biloxi, Mississippi. D, England, 1717. Mark your papers.
Think this one over.
Okay, Jim, I said this was kind of a tricky one, so explain the answer for us.
Well, according to the deepest research on Freemasonry, the first Freemasons were founded or initiated in 1634 in Scotland. And guess what? The very first one was William Alexander Jr., the second one was Anthony Alexander, and the third was our buddy Al Strachan.
That name keeps popping up, doesn't it? Yeah. Jim, there's a lot of discussion that Freemasonry started in England 1717. So why is that answer not correct in this particular situation?
Because that was when the Grand Lodge of England was founded. But in order to have a Grand Lodge, you have to have individual lodges, and 4 lodges came together. So already, you know, that's not the answer, because those 4 lodges had to have already existed in order to come together. But people like Elias Ashmole and Robert Moray, they were 2 famous Freemasons. They were actually initiated back in the 1660 period, in that range. So we know it went back to then.
Right.
But the oldest official records are with Edinburgh Lodge number 1, they call it Mary's Chapel, that's their nickname. And they are for William Alexander Jr., Anthony Alexander, and Al Strachan.
1634.
1634.
And once again, people, we always like to tell you is that these are primary sources. We have the actual document from the lodge with the signatures, which is really, really cool. All right, let's keep moving, Jim. Okay, so this one is maybe a bit controversial, I think. It is often thought that the HO stone stands for gold buried at a certain spot. We believe it might be something a little different. So this goes back to episode 14 of ours. So is it a training tablet to learn to speak like a pirate? B, headquarters for ho-ho snacks? C, a survey marker from 18 or 17, somewhere in that realm, or a marker for the only fresh water on Oak Island? Good question. Okay, I kind of eliminated a couple of the answers, but what is the right answer, Jim?
Well, the right answer, after some pretty thorough research that we did, actually groundbreaking research, is C. It was a survey marker placed there by a gentleman named Ross in 1817. His name is inscribed on it. That date is inscribed on it. We found actual records with the Nova Scotia archives for the command for him to go do that.
Okay, so the H stands for what?
The H was the section it was in, because when they did a grand survey of all of Nova Scotia, it would be difficult to encapsulate all the islands individually, so they just drew a grid over them. And Oak Island was in the H grid.
And what about the next symbol?
That is a standard symbol in surveying as a post, a survey post.
And there's one more symbol, isn't there?
There's the cross with the 4 dots around it. That is also a standard symbol. That is the actual point where you set your transit to do measurement from.
Very cool.
So the transit mark and the O are standard items in surveying, and the H, which is what you discovered, is the section of the overall large map of Nova Scotia.
The H section.
The H section.
Because it was all the different letters of the alphabet dividing Nova Scotia into sections. And I think the other part is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, the HO stone was part of a bigger section that had parts that we discovered, with a G3, which stood for George III, and then Ross's name, 1817, GS just stood for General Surveyor.
General Survey.
So this is research that we've been doing and we believe to be true.
And as you said, we found extra parts. The photo that you generally always see only includes those 3 larger symbols, the H, the cross, and the O. But there were other photos taken that day, and they showed the Ross signature and the date, and they showed GIII, which we think is possibly for George III, because it was also common to put the name of the monarch on a stone back in those days.
And he was king at that time.
He was king at that time.
All right, so that was pretty interesting. So let's move on to number 6. I hope you're enjoying the quiz so far. So why did people from Europe, Jim, want to come to North America in the early 16th century? So just wasn't Nova Scotia, but it was all the colonies in South America, wherever. So A, for summer break. B, wanted for non-payment of child support. C, freedom and vast resources. D, already saw the rest of the world. Okay, mark your answers now. Okay, Jim, what's the answer and why?
The answer is C, freedom and vast resources. In Europe, particularly, a lot of the resources had been depleted, lumber, the game animals. There were plagues happening right and left. The nobility was grabbing power more than ever because they were just as afraid as the average guy that it was all going to fall apart on them. And so when they discovered America, they thought, oh my gosh, look at this. There's all kinds of land. There's the beaver trade.
Beautiful.
There's fresh water, fresh air. There's no king lording over us here. Any plague that was there was something they brought with them. So it was so appealing that a lot of people wanted to go, and a lot of merchant adventurers saw a chance to make a bundle of money because they could get resources there, bring them back to Europe, and sell them.
And some did. All right. Well, I hope you found that question interesting. Now, this one's real controversial in my mind, Jim. The 90-foot stone that we always hear about has been translated by a variety of theorists. What do we believe, Oak Island Plus guys, that what it really says? So here we go. Stay tuned for the new season of The Curse of Oak Island. B, can someone please get this stone off me? C, you are the winner of the Clearinghouse Sweepstakes. Or D, a prayer stone and land claim marker. Okay, Jim, I've seen at least 4 different translations. There's even doubt that the stone even existed, but you did something with this stone. So tell us about that.
Well, it always bugged me that if the stone was to tell you how to dig up the treasure, why the heck would it be put 90 foot down? It would be put up towards the top. It just never made any sense to me. And I happened upon a code that was written by Mary Queen of Scots, a cipher. And I noticed that a lot of the ciphers she used matched the ciphers on the 90-foot stone. So for about 3 months, I hunted around for more sheets of her ciphers. Eventually, at the British Museum, I found them, and there were 104 sheets of paper. They were mixed in with other letters, and they scanned them in for me at my expense, and I found virtually every single mark on the 90-foot stone was in her cipher sheets with a logical word for it, including the titles of 2 different men. And also the only thing that was not in there was the 3-dot triangle, which is a symbol within Freemasonry. So that led me to believe that the stone used her cipher sheets, not that she had anything to do with it, but they used her cipher sheet, and they added the Masonic symbol of the 3-dot triangle. And 2 people that would have known all that would be Thomas Howard,
one of our panelists,
because his grandfather was actually executed for having those exact cipher sheets that I got scans of. And he was Thomas Howard was the master of stonemasons on the day that the first Freemasons were initiated, and those first Freemasons were William Alexander's sons and business partner. So it all ties together in an incredible bundle that, if there's another explanation for all of that, I'm all ears for it, but I don't know of another deciphering of that stone that makes that kind of sense.
Mm-hmm. Jim, real quick, why did Mary Queen of Scots even have a code?
Well, that's a pretty complicated question, but she was when her father died, she was spirited off to France to marry the young King of France. The Catholics were slowly being pushed aside by the Protestants, both in Scotland and in France. And her mother had remained as the consort queen or the regent of Scotland, but she died in 1560, probably of poisoning, and Mary Queen of Scots' husband died in 1560, probably of poisoning. That left Mary in a foreign land with not very many relatives, so she went back to Scotland to claim her proper title of Queen of Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she also happened to be more qualified to be Queen of England than Queen Elizabeth. And Elizabeth knew that, and Mary knew that she couldn't fight the power that Elizabeth had, so she was happy to wait in the wings until Elizabeth passed away. But as it turned out, she was captured by Elizabeth, put in prison for close to 20 years, and eventually beheaded. During that time she was in prison, she wanted to continue to communicate with her supporters, so she created these cipher sheets. And she would give a code breaker sheet to whoever was her outside
So
contact.
at the other end, right.
And then when she'd write a letter in the ciphers, they would get out their control sheet and they would retranslate the letter.
So this was her way to communicate with the outside world.
Unfortunately, she got caught doing it, and that led to her beheading.
Okay. So all interesting points, and hopefully what we believe connects to the 90-foot stone. All right. So let's keep on moving because, Jim, if you go online and look at a variety of Facebook pages, there's lots of different theories, and this particular term comes up a lot. So here's the question. What is a primary source document used by researchers? And we refer to our episode 17 for more information. So A, a college-level social studies report. B, a decoder ring. C, a document written at the time as an historical event. Or D, by guess and by golly. Okay, Jim, I'm pretty positive it's not a decoder ring. So what's the answer?
The answer is C. There are lots and lots of documents available online. They are scans of the actual documents or scans of the actual books. And as an example, we used some papal bulls or edicts from the Pope that were photocopies of the actual documents. We used those. We used the King's Privy Council minutes, which are minutes taken during the meetings of all the legalities that are happening for the king, and just so many other, the Freemason, the first Freemason initiations, we have photostats of the actual writing of that. So those types of things are what we refer to as primary source documents, and we've used a ton of them, and we always go searching for one of those if we can. If we get a theory coming down the pike, it's like, well, where can we get a primary source document for it?
Right. So this is not conjecture. This is based on documents of the moment in time of history.
Yes.
Okay. So there you have that. So let's go on to the next question. We just got three more here. Number 9, which of the following have been on our show, Oak Island Plus, and involved directly with Oak Island? So you can look at episodes 1, 7, 11, 13, and 16. Was it A, Tom and Jerry, B, Rick and Morty, C, Laurel and Hardy, or D, Carmen Legg and Laird Niven? You threw me with B. I was thinking it was Rick and Marty, but you put Morty. So what's the answer?
Well, someday maybe Rick and Marty will be on our show. We
Maybe.
don't know, but We had Carmen Legg on an episode of our show, and we had Laird Niven on one of our shows, and those two folks are on that island all the time. I've been on that island with them right there. And what was the beauty of those two shows was that neither one of those are hampered very much by NDA because...
NDA, what's that?
Non-disclosure agreement, because Laird does not work for the Laginas, he works for the government. And Carmen works for himself. But they're respectful, and I don't think they let any serious cats out of the bag, but they gave us tremendous information, stuff that we could not possibly figure it out any other way. We've also had other guests, like Art Geddes, who's a big hiker up there. That
I mentioned him earlier in the show, right? Art.
We had Scott Walter, who's a little bit controversial, but people seem to be enjoying that show. And
Neeson, and
David Neeson, who's discovered the trees in Scotland that match the old so-called oak trees on Oak Island. It seems to be an exact match. And Erskine, whose family was terribly involved with this whole thing, his ancestor wrote the actual charter for Nova Scotia.
Okay, all very interesting. So, number 10. This is a hard one. There is a painting by Edward Norgate from 1634. Why is it so important? And we will point you to episode 5 on this one. A, hides a bad stain on the wall. B, it shows Bigfoot riding on the Loch Ness Monster. Who writes these answers? C, shows dinosaurs and UFOs building the pyramids. Or D, depicts life in Nova Scotia from about 1623 to 1632. Okay, so Jim, just go right to the answer.
So the answer is D, and I found a paragraph about this painting in a book from the 1800s and where it hung at the time, and it's in this tremendously large mansion in England. Actually, the inspiration for Downton Abbey. And so I talked to the curator, and he said, I'm aware of what you're talking about, but I don't know where that painting is anymore. But let me look around for it. So about 3 months later, and that just shows how it takes 3 months sometimes to get to these things, he found it in a collector's vault. They talked the collector into loaning it back to the estate to hang it where it was supposed to be. Well, it was a picture in the center of King Charles granting Nova Scotia to William Alexander, but all around the edges there were little paintings called vignettes, and each one of them was to represent life in Nova Scotia, and each one of them was a wealth of information. We have one that looks just like Oak Island, it has the trees like that. They're fixing a ship on a shore that looks like Smith's Cove. We had the one that has an estate at the top of the hill, looks just like the New Ross estate. There were 3 of them that were very symbolic, and we think that they stood for, particularly for Gordon, William Alexander, and Strachan, because they resembled their coat of arms. So it was just a wealth of information, and it had been sitting there for all this time until we revealed it. Well, I had originally parts of it in my book, Oak Island and New Ross, which Doc helped me with, and then we decided we're going to do a whole show about that painting. And it's an amazing painting from 1634.
Okay, folks, we've gone through our 10 questions, and we decided to put in a bonus question, Jim. And this is personal to you, okay? So we hope you've enjoyed the questions so far, but this one is going to be a little trickier as well. So here's the bonus question. We'll see if you really know all about Oak Island Plus. What does FSA Scott stand for in the name James A. McQuiston, FSA Scott? A, Frugal Scots of America. B, Funny Sometimes Always a Scot. C, Fellow of Society of Antiquaries of Scotland. Or D, finally some answers. Okay, I would have guessed Frugal Scots of America.
Well, I am frugal. Actually, back in 2014, I was nominated as a fellow with the Society of Antiquaries of Scotland. And that was based on books I'd written back then and magazine articles and online articles. And I had to go through a vetting process of submitting my writings and my research. And then I was accepted. So I've been a fellow since 2014. Now, that isn't just all fluff, because what that does is I automatically have access to people at the National Museum of Scotland and the National Archives of Scotland. But just by having those letters after my name, it opened the door at the British Museum. It opened the door at the National Archives of the UK.
Wow.
I received help from the University of London. I actually received some help from Oxford University. And when I was up in Nova Scotia, I received help from the National Archives. I think they call them the Nova Scotia Archives there.
That's terrific.
And I was invited over to COGS, which is I hope I get this right, but the College of Geographic Sciences. And you've seen them on the show a lot. And Doug was with me, and we spent hours there researching, looking at old maps and old books on Scotland, particularly, and Nova Scotia. And none of that would have happened. Some of it might have happened, but I think most of it happened because I had that foot in the door by saying that I was a fellow with the Society of Antiquaries. So it was a great honor, but it's also been a great blessing.
Very impressive. Well, folks, you had an opportunity to answer some questions that we posed to you, and we hope that you've been following us on YouTube. Also, remember, we do have a Facebook page, and we do invite you to follow us there, because we do drop little things in there from time to time. So how did y'all do? So here's our scientific rating scale. We'd love for you to post your scores on our YouTube channel. Don't be shy. So, Jim, if they scored 0 to 4, Doc recommends a prescription to binge watch all 22 shows and then try again. From 5 to 8 answers, you are a dedicated historical student of Nova Scotia and Oak Island. Well done, well done. If you scored 9 to 10, Jim awards you the title of Honor Student with Distinction. And if you got all 11 right, congratulations. You are awarded our Oak Island Plus Top Honors.
Congratulations.
Well, Jim, I think it's time to wrap things up. That was fun. Thanks for giving us the answers. That was a lot of research you've done over the years.
And you were a pretty good MC.
Thank you, Jim.
I think it was the bow tie, but I'm not sure.
Of course. So we want to thank folks here at the Innovation Studios once again, and our cameraman, Randy Burke. Anything you want to say, Jim?
Well, we are working on another guest from Oak Island for next month. We're hoping like heck we get him. He's already agreed to it, but we haven't got
to put it all together.
Specifics. But we don't want to spill the beans yet until we're sure we have him. But he's very knowledgeable. I met him this year earlier. So we're just having a lot of fun here. Today was totally 100% fun. And we'll be back to the serious stuff next month.
All right, as your host today, I'm Doc Hamels and
Jim McQuiston. Goodbye.
Next time.
This is Robert Clotworthy, and you have been listening to Oak Island Plus, a discussion of Oak Island and other mysteries from around the world. Be sure to catch every episode.